The framing device in Lord Jim introduces Jim through the narrator, Captain Marlowe, who recounts Jim's life as a meditation on guilt, idealism, and the search for redemption. From the beginning, Jim is presented as an able young seaman whose imagination is filled with heroic maritime fantasies. Jim's early career shows promise, but he repeatedly freezes during emergencies, a psychological pattern that foreshadows his central moral crisis. Conrad establishes Jim as a dreamer who yearns for heroic action but struggles to realize it. Jim serves as first mate on the Patna, a ship carrying hundreds of Muslim pilgrims to Mecca. When the vessel hits an underwater object and begins taking on water, the officers panic, convinced the ship will sink. Jim initially resists abandoning his duties. In a moment of weakness, Jim impulsively jumps into a lifeboat with the other officers, abandoning the pilgrims to what he believes is certain death. This single action becomes the defining moral failure of his life. The Patna does not sink, and both passengers and ship are rescued. The event becomes a maritime scandal, and Jim is placed on trial before an official inquiry. The officers flee, but Jim stays and accepts responsibility. Jim loses his officer's certificate, publicly disgraced. The shame of his leap from the Patna haunts him, and he is consumed with Marlowe, recognizing Jim's anguish, tries repeatedly to help him find a fresh start. Jim drifts from job to job, each time having his past discovered or resurfacing in rumor, forcing him to flee. This pattern symbolizes his internal exile and ongoing flight from his own conscience. Marlowe eventually secures a final chance for Jim in the remote trading post of Pertusan, a jungle settlement far from colonial civilization. Jim journeys there in hopes of rebuilding his life beyond the reach of his past. In Pertusan, Jim's natural charisma, courage, and integrity finally flourish. He earns the trust of the locals, defeats a corrupt warlord, and becomes a legend called Tuan Jim, Lord Jim. He achieves the heroic life he once only imagined. Jim forms close bonds, especially with Dorman's family and with Jewel, a woman who loves him and sees him as her protector. For a time, Jim finds purpose, stability, and honor. Jim's downfall arrives when the marauder gentleman Brown enters Pertusan, threatening the peace. Jim allows Brown to leave peacefully, believing he can avert bloodshed through trust. Brown betrays him, launching an attack that causes the death of Dorman's son. Dane Warris, Jim's closest friend and symbol of local faith in him. Crushed by guilt and unwilling to evade responsibility again, Jim presents himself to Dorman, fully aware of the likely consequence. Dorman shoots and kills him. The novel ends with Jim's death as an act of tragic atonement, a final attempt to embody the moral heroism he had always sought. Marlowe concludes that Jim died as he had lived, an obscure conqueror of himself, leaving his legacy one of both failure and nobility.
Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.